Hello everybody, I'm Earl Cox at the Gaza border in Israel, where Kassam rockets continue to fall daily. Despite repeated requests from countries around the world for radical Hamas terrorists to halt their Kassam rocket attacks against the Israeli people in southern Israel, these barbaric acts continue, leaving Israel with no alternative or recourse than to pursue hunting down these radicals who are bent on completely destroying Israel and her people. This week on Front Page Jerusalem Radio, my co-host David Parsons steps aside from the FPJ Roundtable and turns the reins over to me here in southern Israel. Joining me today at the Front Page Jerusalem Roundtable is Danny Seaman, who is the director of the Israeli Government Press Office and who is the chief spokesman for the State of Israel. Danny, for some years we have both seen results of terrorism, from suicide bombings brought to outright aggression against Israel by radical Muslim terrorists. We have witnessed the loss of lives and destruction of Israel's real estate and repeatedly heard promises from terrorists to annihilate Israel off the face of the earth. Danny, Christians from around the world who share a spiritual connection to the land of Israel are trusting that your government will not be persuaded by the international community to roll over dead and allow radical Muslim terrorists to continue their campaign to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. How committed is Israel to once and for all demonstrate a total commitment to rid Israel of terrorist aggression?
Well, Earl, first off, thank you for being here in Israel at this important time. I'm sure that the residents of Sderot are very happy that to see that people who care deeply for them are coming and visiting them at this time. I also want to say you're actually the first person who's actually made that connection between what the terrorism that we went through in the early 21st century, the war in Lebanon, and the events that are happening this week. It's not separate. Though it's presented as such in the media, this is all part of that continued war against the terrorism, which its goal is the annihilation of the State of Israel. So obviously the State of Israel is dedicated to put an end to this for once and for all. The people of Sderot, and you've been here often in the past 7 years, have been suffering almost daily disruptions, if you want to call it, to their lives. At 3.5 years now, it's been for Ashkelon, where I grew up and where my mother lives. The government of Israel has shown tremendous patience. We've went through this 6 months of a ceasefire that Israel ceased firing, while Hamas almost every day fired at least 2 missiles in the direction of Israel. The people of Israel demand of the government to put an end to it for once and for all. We believe that at this time we're sending a clear message, not only to Hamas, but also to Hezbollah and also to other terrorists who seek our destruction, that Israel has finally had enough and we're going to put an end to the violence against our civilians.
Danny, Sderot is almost like a ghost town compared to what it was like 6 weeks ago when I was here. How much need is it to help these people out?
Well, obviously, people don't understand because you hear in the news, and sometimes you don't even hear about what's going on in Israel. You hear that missiles fell in Israel, and people don't understand the human toll that this takes, perhaps not in lives, but in the disruption of people's living. Because the town is shut down. If your viewers can just, they're watching this program at the moment or listening to it on the radio, imagine that you hear a siren going off and you have 15 seconds to find cover. Some places have a secure room. Most people have to find coverage or take refuge in a hallway. My mother in Ashkelon, she does not have a safe room. She has 45 seconds in which to get to the hallway of the building. And those instructions have saved the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of Israelis. The people here it's not once and it's not twice. It can be every few minutes. It can be several times a day. It can be in the middle of the night. You have to drop everything. The few people who are still employed have to drop their businesses, run for cover, find some place to hide. So obviously businesses are shut down. The schools have not been operating here now for several weeks. Many people have sent their families away. My brother's children are in my house in Jerusalem. They haven't seen their children for the whole week. They come by to see them in the weekend. My mother, who brings up my nieces and nephews, has been lonely in she refuses to leave her home. It's sometimes hard for a 75-year-old to change her way of life, but it's a statement. She doesn't want to leave her home. She misses her grandchildren. She's used to the house being full of children there. So the lives are disrupted here. People can't go to work. And Sderot, it has been much worse. People of Sderot have had this going for them. Sometimes they don't even have an alert. They just hear the explosion. So it has a psychological toll. It certainly has a psychological toll on the children that still remain here. So people have the fact that businesses aren't operating. It affects the local other industries, such as the food industry. We're in a small market here, which when the businesses around us, when they were operating, they would feed them. The newspaper would provide them with newspapers. These things don't have, their public aren't here to help them out. So people are losing their jobs, losing their businesses. Besides the daily disruption to their lives, it also has a tremendous economic toll on them.
Danny, there's been a lot of casualties on the other side. But most people in America and around the world don't realize that the people of southern Israel are suffering as well.
Well, that's exactly it. This is what's going on in this imbalanced war that we're facing. Israel is punished twice. Not only were we assaulted and attacked by the Hamas, in this case, we left Gaza Strip 3.5 years ago. There is not a Jewish settlement there. But from the moment we left, they began a barrage of missiles in the south of Israel. This continues to this day, 3.5 years later, every time finding a different excuse for that firing. But the thing is here that Israel, over the past 7.5 years, has spent $2 billion to build up defenses for our publics here, building rooms, you were very instrumental in giving money here for, right behind us, you can see the bus stop. And that was a brilliant idea that you came up with, that the bus stops are everywhere, every 100 or so meters, that people can have these bus stops and run for cover. I've used them several times in the past 10 days, that you can take cover in these locations. So Israel has spent, as I said, $2 billion. This is only the government. I'm talking about the work of individuals and private organizations that helped build locations to defend the public here. We spend tens of millions of dollars to educate the people. Why does my mother know that she has to take cover in the hallway of the building? Because we have taught the people where the safest location in a building is. So we spent all this money to protect and defend our civilians. So it's not been luck that there have not been Israeli casualties, civilian casualties. It has been a matter of government investment and education of the public, and more than that, the public listening to the instructions. On the other hand, the Hamas has used hundreds of millions of dollars that come from the Europeans and the Americans, taxpayer dollars that have come to them to benefit the society. It has been stolen by the Hamas to build not only the underground infrastructure for their military offensive, but also to purchase the weapons. These same weapons, the same missiles, they fire in the direction of Israel. They hide behind the civilians. They send the civilians out on the rooftops then when Israel comes in, so that they deliberately put the civilians in the line of fire. So you have a fundamental difference between Israel, which sanctifies life and protects its civilians and does everything to try to limit civilian deaths on the other side, and the Hamas, who cynically uses its own civilians and deliberately fires in the direction of our civilians.
And Danny, we witnessed that just a few days ago at the UN.
Yes, you saw that at the UN building, a school. It hasn't been the first time. And for 2 years ago, we had pictures of that school that was operated by the United Nations having Hamas terrorists fire rockets from there in the direction of Israel. We showed that footage to the United Nations. They did nothing about it. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, again, they fired from the school. This time, there was a military operation in Gaza. They returned fire. They killed. That's the one thing the UN is not telling people here. The 2 people who fired the motors from the schoolyard were killed. But unfortunately, also as a result of the collateral damage, you had several civilians also killed in that location. So what you have here is a situation where Israel defends itself, the civilian casualty on the other side that were killed as a result of not the irresponsibility. They weren't being irresponsible. They were being deliberate. They were deliberately putting their civilians in the line of fire, because what happens is when the civilians are killed, an international outcry against the state of Israel. So Israel is in a sense condemned twice. One for the firing, and second for the condemnation that when we take legitimate actions of self-defense, killing civilians that they put in harm's way, we're accused of being insensitive to their safety.
Danny, among the people that I talk with here in southern Israel, the consensus is that Hezbollah in the north, up around Syria, are waiting to wear Israel down. At least wait till Hamas wears Israel down before they make a move. Is it a good possibility of something like that could happen? And is Israel prepared for it?
Well, it's interesting you raise that issue again, because you're making again the connection between Hezbollah and Hamas. Though we fought them 2.5 years ago, we're fighting Hamas now. It's one and the same battle: battle against terrorism, battle against evil, battle against extremism. So the Hezbollah, yeah, they're hoping to, but it's a wrong calculation on their part. The Israeli public are not going to be worn down. The Israeli military is not going to be worn down. We're going to fight them with determination, with absolute seriousness, and the understanding of the dedication for the defense of our lives. So if they think they're doing that, they're completely miscalculating here. But we can see the results of the Lebanon war at the moment. The fact that Hezbollah has not joined in the party, it shows that they got the message, a clear message 2.5 years ago, that Israel is serious. They see our response here against Hamas. They understand that we are very serious. They don't want to put themselves in the line of fire. But still not trusting them, we've also gone, and this also has another economic effect on Israel's, financial effect on Israel's economy, by taking people away from their jobs, calling students from the universities, bank workers, the average Israeli, calling them up from dropping everything, leaving their homes, leaving their families. We've enlisted tens of thousands of reservists who have dropped everything and have not only been brought down to Gaza, but we've moved people up north just in case Hezbollah and perhaps even Syria would make the mistake of thinking that they could join in. Israel is prepared and ready for them.
Danny Seaman, official spokesman for the State of Israel. I'm Earl Cox at the Gaza border in Israel.